Joydeep, thanks so much for joining us again. Great to catch up in the new year. Well, speaking of which, of course, how is 2024 shaping up for both employers and employees? Can we safely say that we've put COVID to rest now and perhaps returning to the pre-COVID era?
Yeah, happy New Year, Andrew, and to all in the broader Ausbiz ecosystem. Look, I think it's going to be a very interesting year this year because we now find ourselves in what's effectively the fifth year of the post-pandemic sort of era, and what we are seeing and hearing a lot of is that quite different to some of the noise over the last 18 to 24 months, which was very much around working from home, hybrid working is here to stay. That's the new reality, etc. We're actually hearing quite differently that a lot of employers are wanting things to be back to how they were pre-pandemic. We're seeing a lot of employers interested in understanding their options in relation to actually mandating full kind of 5 days or permanent returning to primary place of work, offices, etc. We're seeing some employers thinking about it slightly differently by way of linking bonuses, for example, to how much time people actually spend attending their primary place of work. So for a while, and I think this will play out probably the first 6 to 8 months of this year, you'll see almost this duality of what employers are offering when it comes to that, with a lot of employers saying, look, we did what we had to do over the last however many years, but really our workplace and our business, our organisation is about people coming back. Now, what that means for employees is for a while, they're going to have some choices that will be available to them, but I worry that may not be something that's available to them longer term.
So you talk about there perhaps linking bonuses to start time spent in the office. Is there any sort of definitive studies that have been done just in terms of productivity with working from home compared with working in the office?
It's a funny one because there's obviously AI, there's software that can monitor productivity up to a certain point. What we see, and my own sense, is that the issue of productivity still carries with it a lot of subjectivity, because there are things that can't necessarily be attributed to a strict productivity measure. And I'll take as at a most basic level, the issue of accessibility to team members that a supervisor or a manager might want to have. And it's commonly said that, look, I know that if I schedule a call with someone or book an appointment, that's fine, they're going to be available, but those moments and those occasions, those needs I have to just pop into someone or go to their workstation or go into their office or see them at the particular area where they should be working as their primary place of work, that's taken away from me. So that introduces an inefficiency for me as a leader, because I then have to find a workaround for the lack of accessibility to that particular person. Now, some might say that's not the biggest thing in the world, but for those who are in those supervisory and managerial positions, that's massively inconvenient. And there's a lot of those issues of personal impact for those who are quite comfortable to be working from that primary place of work or the office, if we call it that, on a permanent or certainly mostly permanent basis. Their perception, their sense of it being inconvenient for others not to be working in that way.
So I guess the question is, can employers mandate a full return to the office 5 days a week?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if an employer can establish that that is what is needed in order for a person's job to be done, the only thing they have to be mindful of is where employees have legitimate carers' responsibilities or other circumstances that are given a level of protection under the law, whereby the employer does need to make accommodations for that particular person. But there's certainly no blanket obligation, even if an employer has allowed and actively encouraged working from home or hybrid working over the last few years. There's nothing that means that that's an entrenched position that employer has to adopt. And if it's their view that legitimately and genuinely in the interests of the effective conduct of their business and their operations, they need people back at work, then absolutely that's something that they can do.
Joydeep, more broadly, how would you describe the current attitude of employees with perhaps some regard of a sense of entitlement there? Maybe this is a generational issue. A lot of questions, of course, and fingers pointed at those younger generations now coming into the workforce. Are we seeing a change, an attitudinal problem perhaps emerging that employers have to deal with?
Yeah, absolutely. And this is something that has been happening for the better part of the last decade. Certainly what we've seen over the last 4 or 5 years, influenced by the pandemic and the impact of that on working patterns and working relationships, has been an exacerbation of that. Um, I think it is fair to say that if you look at probably the most simple dynamic of the working relationship, which is longevity and tenure, the statistics are very clear that nowadays working for an employer for 2 years is considered a very, very long time. Now, if you rewind 10, 15 years ago, a prospective employer would have a lot of concerns about someone who'd had a series of 18 months to 2 year working relationships with their previous employers. What that does is it means that the mindset of someone who joins an organisation is that it's very unlikely that they are signing up for the long haul. They're really looking to make an assessment, and in all likelihood probably looking to make a move some stage in the 12 to 18, at most 24 months within starting at an organisation. And if you're approaching an employment relationship as a new employee with that as your starting mindset, well, it means that you're not looking at it in terms of I've got to build my credibility, I've got to prove my worth because this is a place where I want to stay for a long time. You're the one who's making a lot of those assessments, and that's really what translates into that employee entitlement mindset, or what is commonly referred to or paraphrased as that entitlement mindset. Absolutely, it's something that is more pronounced if you look at the data and the studies around this, to the extent that there are those studies, for millennials and those who perhaps in the sort of 18 to 30 age bracket. But it's not just limited to those. And the reality is employers have to respond to that. There's no point bemoaning it. There's no point employers saying, oh, back in the day, or, you know, when I was growing up, when I first started, I'd never do this or I wouldn't do that. It doesn't matter. It just doesn't get anyone anywhere. The employers have to brace the challenge. And as I say to a lot of my employer clients, respond. Don't feel that you just have to play defense. If employees are going to have a transactional mindset to the employment relationship, have a similarly transactional mindset to the relationship as an employer. That way you feel a lot less exposed, a lot less hurt, a lot less disappointed and angry when someone says, you know, see, I've been here for a year, I'm moving on.
And Joydeep, when we consider the year ahead, certainly there's a feeling perhaps of uncertainty and volatility when you have to look at what's going on geopolitically. Also with the economy, of course, as to whether perhaps we may well slip into recession. What's the likely effect of that, do you think, in the workplace?
Yeah, it's going to continue to be challenging. I think one of the things that we're hearing a lot, and not just limited to Australia, but globally, is the impact of world events and how this is playing out in terms of the employment context. I mean, recently the president of Harvard had to step down as a result of, you know, a couple of things. One of the, not the least of which, was a view expressed in relation to the conduct of Harvard students in the context of what's happening in Israel and Gaza at the moment. And I think it's symbolic of the increased scrutiny of leaders translating into an increased narrative that's almost has to be accepted around what people say or do within a workplace context. But the challenge for employers is how are you going to regulate that? This is arguably one of the most tense environments globally, which is translating into so many tensions, views expressed, controversial views expressed, emotions are high, all of that kind of stuff. And that's playing out in an Australian workplace context. So that's going to be a big thing. Employers are struggling with how they deal with that. And the economic uncertainty, as you say, Andrew, is also going to be something that will be real. Whether that acts as a counter to that employee entitlement mindset, we might see a bit more of that, those behaviours that are conducive to stability and tenure. But all of these will make for a very interesting 2024 in the employment space.